Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly, reflecting our shared ambition to help coaches have the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. We hope you enjoyed this episode and thanks for listening. Dan, Ray, welcome both to the podcast. How are you both doing? You've got to talk over each other now.
Yeah, no, I'll go first. I'm all good. I'm all good. World Cup fever, isn't it? So it's going to be withdrawal symptoms when it goes into the latter stages where there's not a couple of games every day. So but all good.
When you get a day off, yeah. And how are you, Dan?
Yeah, all good, thank you. I'm just getting withdrawals from sleep because I'm staying up and watching the World Cup games. So
I was going to say, are you watching it? I don't know. I think when you have a career in football, I can't work out even like that. You need a break from it sometimes, or you're getting the games in, are you?
Yeah, World Cup's always special, isn't it? So
isn't it just? Yeah. And
actually, I think,
yeah. Well, we had a guest on 2 weeks ago, Ray, didn't we? And talking about some of the games, and actually, even the games you may not necessarily wanted to watch because it doesn't look like a high-profile game, but they've been some good matches. Actually, some of the better games, I think. Some of the ones with the lesser team, not lesser teams, but the less likely to win it teams. Maybe I've quite enjoyed watching those.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we had Cape Verde last night as well. That's an incredible result. That's an incredible World Cup moment, even if we don't quite realise it yet, because that's. Okay, it's not a giant killing as such, but a 0-0 in those circumstances is huge. And then absolutely. I can't remember I don't think John mentioned Iran and New Zealand in his build-up, but that was a terrific game.
He missed the one, didn't he? Yeah.
He
missed one.
Yes, but here we are.
Good, very good. Okay, cool. Well, we're not going to talk about the World Cup. That's okay, Dan. We're going to pick knowledge in different areas. So we are going to focus really around, I know something that you've been quite keen and worked a lot in over the years. But before we get onto the actual topic itself, if you don't mind, Dan, just a very kind of headline summary about kind of what you've done, your journey and what you're currently doing. And don't go into too much detail because we want to pick some of that stuff apart anyway. So just read the headlines about, what you've done and how you got to where you are now. That's okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm currently the academy manager at Notts County. It's my second stint at this club. Actually started here back in 2010, having worked in grassroots. So my coaching journey started in Loughborough with under sevens. Had the pleasure of working with Hamza Chowdhury, who's now been at Leicester City for a number of years, and really, like a lot of people, started in grassroots football where the foundation of football in this country is made. So was lucky enough to get an opportunity at Notts as a part-time coach, worked through different roles there, had a year at Barnet as academy manager as well, and then was really fortunate to go out to Norway to FK Bodø Glimt and had 3.5 years there with their academy, and learned a lot about youth development whilst I was there. 4 years back at Notts County this year.
Very good. Has it changed much since your first time, second time at Notts? Is it 2010 is, I guess, a good few years ago. Has there been big changes since that time?
Yeah, I think it changed a lot throughout the time. My first stint there, we had the first EPPP audits, very small staff, and that rapidly grew over the years that I was there. And unfortunately, whilst I was away working at other clubs, they got relegated to the National League. So my return to the club, they were still in the National League, so we weren't a categorised academy. The guys did a great job managing to keep it going. And it was, parents were paying and they were finding funding from other sources. And it was really that rebuild from getting promoted back to League Two that, kicked off kind of like a real big project for us at the club. So we had three years back in the EFL now, so kind of established ourselves back at Cat 3.
You get a real sense from outside of it, the Notts County is a proper community club. Would that be fair to say? It's, it's got a very loyal fan base and it's very much part of the local community, part of the area and I guess in those times when things aren't going so well, that's something you can lean on, and that's great that, you've got that opportunity to do that. But have I got that right? I'm not from Nottingham, so I don't know, but I'm guessing it feels that way.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a big enough city to have two clubs. Obviously Forest have done amazing things in the last few years, and get into the Premier League kind of puts them in a different world, really. So yeah, we feel like we're a community club. We want to work with grassroots clubs, and we don't have a huge scouting network, so we rely on a lot of like word of mouth and people knowing that we're trying to do good things. So yeah, I think like you say, through the through the tough times, we had people that were supported the club, and the supporters association were a big part of that as well. And to have a League Two club that's pulling in average attendances of 10,000 every week is
Yeah.
amazing, really. And I'm sure, and the manager says it all the time, and the players, that that's part of the reason why they managed to do it in the end.
Yeah.
That I actually cross over with Dan quite a bit. Fleetingly back in it might have been 2011, I think, Dan, when I was there. And I was there that very night of the first EPPP one, and that whole process. So that was just, I'd forgotten completely about it till you mentioned it there. Talking about Notts, sort of in the wider context of being in Nottingham, but also, so you've got Nottingham Forest on your doorstep, you've got Leicester, you've got Derby, you've got the Birmingham clubs that are not a million miles away. What is it in your program then? So when you do have kids in the building and the reputation of your program, what do you have to do to compete with all that? Because okay, you've also got a bundle of other Cat 3 clubs, don't you, in your vicinity as well. How do you compete with that? How do you make sure you've got a good enough program to withstand that sort of competition?
Yeah, I mean the competition's incredible. I worked in London as well with Barnet, and it was it was very similar there with the amount of teams that are within your travelling distance. Birmingham, Sheffield as well, like huge cities on your doorstep, pretty much. I mean, one of the things we tried to do in the first time around was recruit really well at pre-academy, because there's a big pool of players there, and it's almost like the time we're a little bit more free to travel around and try things. And we're always just like try not to put anyone under pressure to sign for us, and we don't see it as it being like competitive. I think we see it as like, we're here. If this is the right place you think for your son, then we hope that you choose to come here. Whereas I think some other clubs can be a little bit more aggressive in the way they try and do it, because maybe they're under a bit more pressure to get the best players. So we managed to put together some really good teams in the first time round, and 3 years back in it now, we've got, in particular in our 9s to 11s, three really strong age groups again. And credit to the guys that run the pre-academy, but also then credit to the guys that have been helping us recruit in all the other age groups, because we pretty much started from scratch, although we had a core group of players that were here as kind of like a grassroots club before promotion. There has been quite a big turnover of players across those age groups, because it's a more attractive offer now to be a part of a Cat 3 academy than it was to be in a parent pay program.
Does that lean into what Scott said earlier about being a community club, and also, I guess, even as an academy being, that's the vibe I got when I was there, that it was kind of set up to be a friendly family. If you come in here, you might have an offer elsewhere higher up the food chain, but you might actually like this better because of maybe the softer things that are involved.
Yeah, I think so. And it's probably something we've tried really hard in terms of the staff that we've recruited as well. Although no member of staff's the same, and everyone's got different personalities, and we're all very different. One thing is, like, we're all got a real care for the players. Like, ultimately, we probably put them before everything else. We try and be like an empathetic group of people. We understand that these kids and their families also have lives outside of Notts County as well. So it's not like a end of the world if you miss one session because the older sister's got a swimming competition or something. So we try and be as flexible with people as we can, and ultimately you want people to come into somewhere they want to be, and I think I do that the same with the staff as well. I hope that the staff enjoy working for us, and that's something I've really tried to put in place and pride myself on.
Dan, would you say that's one of your differentiations? And I'm not trying to, I mean, you've got to find a way to compete, right? With great respect, maybe some of the might perceive bigger badges around potentially, perception wise, if not in practice. How do you differentiate yourself? And if you've got a great little under-8s player that wants to join, he's got some choices, or she's got some choices where they want to go to. How do you kind of, what's the unique selling point, I guess, to go into Notts County rather than maybe somewhere else? Is that part of the offer, I guess, that empathy and that, understanding what it comes with?
Yeah, definitely. I think, every environment's different for each parent and player, and ultimately they'll be making the choice for them, which they think's the best. And all we can do is try and highlight the benefits of being in our program or a Cat 3 program or a League 2 or a League 1 club. Obviously, they all want to go and play in the Premier League, but hopefully we can actually also showcase that you can still get there by starting with us as well. We've fortunate that we've managed to move a couple of players on to higher clubs in the last couple of years already. But like I said, with the strength of our program each year, we're now getting a lot of interest from Premier League teams and Cat 1 academies for our players as well. So yeah, hopefully coming to us, they get the best of both worlds. They eventually get to where they want to be. And I guess the
Yeah.
other thing is that it can be perceived as easier to get through if you're a good player in a lower league club. I'm more confident that in League One it's going to be easier than League Two, because I think statistically League Two is the hardest league to break through into as a young player. But we've been
Why is that,
fortunate.
Dan? Why do you think that is?
Um, I couldn't. I'm not sure I can put my finger on it, to be honest.
Because
Um,
obviously when you guys were in the National League, I was doing your job in another club, and it was like I was having so many conversations with players and parents going, well, look, 18-year-olds don't play in the National League,
yeah,
and I didn't have any numbers or figures to go on, but I never saw one on a Saturday. And I suppose the perception kind of is that the lower down you go, the better chance you have of breaking through. But everyone still wants 25-year-olds, don't they? Everyone still
yeah,
wants 28-year-olds, and it's really, really difficult for young. It's probably the biggest barrier, I guess, for young players. But as you know, I lived in Notts for about 4 or 5 years, and it's a proper football city, Nottingham. And both clubs I found, or especially at academy level, always wanted to play football. There was always a flair about it. Is that a Nottingham thing, or is that a club thing, or is it? I've been to clubs where that's a really hard sell to parents. You're going to take the ball from the keeper, on the 6 yard line, and everyone had a problem with it at other clubs. But in Nottingham, there was something. I don't know. It feels like it's inbuilt somehow.
yeah. I think it's. I'm not sure, not sure why that is either, Ray. To be honest, but no, it's nice to be a part of. We have got a really defined playing style across our pathway into our first team. If you've watched our first team play last 4 or 5 years under this new ownership, it's very, structured in a certain way. So, we work really hard to filter that down, appropriately to the other age groups. And we do change around formation a little bit in the older age groups just to give the boys different experiences and different challenges. But you could probably watch any of our 11-a-side teams and they all look very similar. And it's having the boys on the ball as much as possible and being creative and yeah, hopefully
You use
enjoying.
the you use the word appropriate there, so I assume that to be age appropriate. Just dig into that for us a little bit. So what is building from the back that we might see in your first team on a Saturday, which I have done this year as well. They are a very good footballing team. What does that look like for? Let's go down the chain a little bit. Your 18s, your 14s, your 11s, or whatever that may be.
Yeah, I guess there's a higher element of risk the lower you go down. Um, Ultimately, I think our first team manager's there to win games of football, regardless of what style of play that he's playing. Then probably each manager that we've had in the first team has done things slightly different, and some have been more risk averse than others. But I think you have that freedom in youth development where the risk is a learning factor, isn't it? It's not so much of a pressure, I don't see. And that's certainly in the way that we coach, we'll be making sure that's getting across to the players. But I think the other thing with the younger ones is you actually need to give the coaches a little bit of freedom. We don't say this is how you have to build up in a back
Mm-hmm.
three. You know, I want the coaches to be creative and find solutions and work around the players that they've got. And if they need to adapt things for the player that needs the work or needs the support or to showcase someone's talent, then that's what they'll do.
The grassroots coach, Dan, who's afraid because of results, probably, and I know this is a really old conversation, but I still think it's an important one. And you might get it with some of your academy coaches as well, potentially, where the risk averseness kind of gets muddled up in wanting to win and chasing league trophies and all that sort of stuff. What is it we can say to them to convince them to allow players, if that's the right term, to be more creative, to get on the ball, to not want to get rid of it, not want to stick it in the corners and all that sort of stuff that we do still hear so much?
I think it's for players to get better at what they're going to do, they need to be able to practice. And I think throughout any part of youth development, it's all practice, because they're not necessarily fighting for titles. Although I know the under nines coach of a club, and to be fair, like you can't fault them and the kids for like enjoying winning a trophy. Like
Yeah.
that's the point of a game of football, right? Is to try and beat the other team. And when you see the pictures on like even like my family members, they've got young kids that are playing, and my son himself plays grassroots. Like I've seen him come off a pitch crying because they've lost a penalty shootout. Do you know what I mean? That is a part of football, and I think that's probably also what makes football so good, like at any level. But afterwards, it doesn't matter. I think that's what you need to get your heads around. It's there's one thing like creating memories for the kids, and but if you actually want them to improve, and if that's your purpose is to help the players get better at football, then if you're not going to allow them to take risks and make mistakes, then what is it they're going to learn?
Yeah.
They become very good at kicking the ball from one end of the pitch to the other. But
and that's what worries. Go on.
Yeah.
And that's what worries me, that we do kind of subliminal messages or maybe just outright messaging. Like I guess on game day is about to be afraid of the ball and get rid of it and don't play there and don't pass across your own box and put it out of play, as if a good learning football solution would be to put it out of play, regardless of context. But I always find it a little bit disappointing that we always equate it to losing somehow. You know what I mean? That if you play out from the back or you build, you're opening yourself up to losing, and it's such a shame because you saw Cape Verde. We already mentioned, okay, they didn't penetrate from back to front through the thirds too often, but they had some joy and had some spells where they did get on the ball and were able to play even against Spain. I guess I'm always looking for little opportunities to help teach coaches that.
Dan, can I ask a question on that one then? Just what age do you think, there should be a shift between maybe where it is kind of stay on the ball, play with freedom, mistakes don't really matter, and I think there's a good case for that maybe at younger ages. But what age do we then start thinking, okay, do you know what? Now we've got to start thinking about making good choices for the team, and taking an approach to a game in which it's effective to try and win that match. Now, obviously, first team football is first team football, so we get that. That is about winning. But because some people think when we can do that under 10s, that's okay. Some people think not until under 16s or 18s, but just broadly speaking, from your perspective, when do how does that gauge kind of work up? At what point does it become more about results? I'm not saying not about development, but when does it become more of a balance? Would you say?
Yeah, I think players should always have a desire to win. I think that's natural in anyone who plays any kind of sport. You're probably not going to. I don't go and play paddle with my mates to try and lose.
It's a competition, right?
I go to win. I think there's always going to be a natural drive within any player. The level of that drive will differ between different players, and I think and different groups. I think that's probably what's most important is knowing your team and knowing the drive and the different personalities that are within there. I think in terms of our program, we basically don't really work on much to do with the team up until under 13s. Our foundation phase program, which includes our under 12s, is all about like developing a toolkit that you can then go and apply to the game, and we then start to look at more tactical things in the under 13s and above. And I think it's my experience of being abroad has probably broadened like my horizons on that as well. That most academies in other countries don't start till that age anyway. So what is it? What are they learning at a younger age? And a lot of it is about mastering the ball and being good in 1v1 duels and that sort of thing. So and I think it's just a gauge then, like I said, with the individual, the group, but increasing that, not, I wouldn't call it pressure, but like trying to provoke like good decision making in the players. Because you don't
Yeah.
want the player to give the ball away playing out from the back and give the goal away. You want them to find the solution in that moment. So I think
Yeah.
we have to keep pushing them to not bypass the moment, like experience it. But
And surely having
ultimately,
different ways of playing, Dan, as well, right? You don't want to just play one way, do you? I mean, sure, because you don't know as a
yeah,
player what team you might end up one day. I mean, it's okay playing for Notts, and that might be great. But if you moved on or did change for whatever reason, through your own choice or someone else's choice, having that variety in the way you can play has got to be important too.
yeah, 100%. A lot of our players will go through non-league on loan. We had Riley Reynolds has been at Kidderminster for the last 2 seasons, and he's fitted into their playing style through
Yeah.
bits he's learnt from us, but stuff he's learnt from elsewhere before he came to us, and they've probably added loads of stuff to his game as well since he's been there. So, yeah, I think, like I say, it's you want players to make good decisions in those moments. So if you don't give them those moments, then there's going to be an issue, and ultimately, no one in our B team down is going to lose their job because they lose a game of football.
Yeah.
So I don't think there should be any issue with making mistakes and
Would
losing football games in any of those age groups. You
would
just
you
hope.
say, Dan?
Sorry, go on.
Would you say, Dan, that when you send a player on loan, and I'm being a little bit sweeping here, but would you say it's easier for the boy who's been through a highly technical program, we'll say? You think it's easier for them to, I don't know, learn to clip it in the channels or learn to play off a second ball, for example, than it is the other way around? You know what I mean? If you spend your youth clipping it in the channel and fighting and doing it, it's then very hard, I would say, to win to senior football and learn to play. Would you agree, or is it a little bit more
Um,
complicated?
it's probably more complicated. I get what you're saying though. I think like the basic things you're being asked to do if it's a basic game plan are going to be easier for those players to perform, and if your tactics are more intricate or you're asking the player to do something he's never done before in a very technical possession based team, it's going to be tough. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the the mind of that player, like the personality, the you know how adaptable are they, how resilient are they? Um, because I think if they've got that, they'll overcome it anyway. Either way.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, we want to get moved on if that's okay in a bit to talk about what you did about Glimt and that stuff there. I think that will take us on to the topic as well. But I've got one more question that's okay, just around because you started being a grassroots coach back in I think you said 2010. Just generally speaking, and I guess you might know this from your current role now. How are you finding the caliber of grassroots players that are coming through, especially those like pre-academy kind of the young ones compared to 2010? Broadly speaking, is there are they stronger groups now because of I think the way the coaching's been, and I think as grassroots coaches we've probably got more access to information, resources, equipment, and stuff, and hopefully we're doing a better job out there. So therefore, you'd hope that caliber of younger players is a bit better because of the grassroots coaching's got stronger. Is that something you're seeing, or am I off the mark there? But Brentwood, I don't think grassroots coaching is fantastic. I think we've got a lot of work to do still in lots of ways, especially around game day, I think. But broadly speaking, you get a sense that maybe we're better coaches than we were maybe 10,
Yeah,
15 years ago. But are you seeing that? Are the kids stronger, better now than they might have been, say, back in 2010?
yeah. I think there's more of the better caliber of player from what I'm seeing. And like I don't watch loads of grassroots coaching, so it's hard to pin it down on something in there. But I noticed like on a Friday night, our foundation phase when they first arrive to training, they do a bit of a warm up and then they do this like finishing carousel for like 25 minutes. And like the technique of these kids is like crazy. Like it's like watching a bunch of pros like
Yeah.
banging footballs at the goalies. And yeah, I think that's probably when I first like took me back and thought like, wow, like we
Compared
had
to when you were
probably
doing grassroots back in maybe 2010, you can see a difference, right? You can
yeah,
see
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was the foundation phase lead at Notts for a couple of years, and so I had those boys in those age groups, and there might have been two or three that were capable of performing those techniques like consistently, whereas like every player in the group is doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
it's I'm seeing probably less like profiles in the younger age groups now.
Yeah.
They're a lot more. The players seem to be a lot more rounded. Like I think back in the when I was doing the foundation phase, you felt like it was a bit clearer about okay, he's most likely going to be a centre half, or
Yeah.
he's obviously like midfielder. This guy just wants to play up front all the time, and it's I think I see a little bit less of that in the better players. That they're all pretty much capable of doing anything.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm going
That's
to
good.
ask the question that everyone wants to ask. What and as concise as you can, what does a finishing carousel session look like? Because everyone listening would have wrote down that and gone, "What is it?" I'm going to Google it, but you won't find it. What does that look like in on the grass?
Absolute carnage. To summarize it, it's amazing. It's my favorite session out of everything that goes on in our academy. Just the environment around it. The boys absolutely love it. The goalkeepers love it. And it's basically three or four different finishing stations where they work on different techniques. Some of them are opposed, some are unopposed. And the boys are just getting loads of repetition, and I don't think there's a single player in there that doesn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And your centre back, I know, and I'm doing the bunny ears for people who are listening rather than watching, but your centre backs do that because it's all technique anyway, right? Would that be fair
Yeah,
to say? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. We don't like I say the bunny is we don't have any, but
What you mean?
I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Good.
Brilliant. Okay. Should we move on, Ray? Should we talk about, Dan, if you don't mind, we talk about, your time at Bodø Glimt. Obviously, they've become a household name, I would say, because of how they've done the Champions League and the football they played and stuff like that. So most people know about, a bit about them at least, but you were obviously closer to that and part of that journey. You happy to talk us through a little bit about, what that looked like and what you were doing and your time there?
Yeah, of course. Um, yeah, I mean, it was an amazing opportunity, an amazing experience, and still to this day getting experiences off the back of it. Because I've been able to go and watch him at Dortmund, at PSV, at Arsenal, at Man United since I've left the club as well. So, um, friends there for life in terms of people that work there, and still in touch with players and families as well. Um, even though it's been 4 years since I left, so yeah, it's like a home from home. And I'm actually taking our under 13s to under 15s there next week
Brilliant.
to go and play against them in those age groups. So yeah, really looking forward to getting back there and like show what a wonderful city and surrounding area that it is.
And what was it about there that made him? I mean, there's a lot of successful teams, but what would you say being close to that environment? What was it that, enabled them to kind of probably punch a bit above their weight and achieve things that they did because they've done some amazing stuff there? Being close to that, I know it's not a secret sauce necessarily, but was there anything that was different to maybe what goes on elsewhere that enabled them to have that success?
Um, I think that the biggest part of well, there's two parts to it really. The first part was not coincidental, but was probably less planned. Was that they had a group of players that came through together. Um, so the guys are still playing there now. You've got Patrick Berg, the captain, Jens Petter Hauge, Håkon Evjen, Frederick Bjørken, Ulrik Saltnes. These guys were like the main like members of the team when I first got there, even though they're only sort of 19 to kind of 22 at the time. They'd kind of been thrust into the team when they were in the second division. And they played, they got promoted and they stayed together. And there's just something there then. These boys have been playing together since they were like 10. Although like Håkon and Ulrich weren't from the city originally, they're from like outside, which is another like totally different world compared to this country and what anyone has to deal with in terms of player recruitment. Like it's insane. But, the the boys had known each other or played together for that long, and I think that's something special that you don't see often. You talk about the class of '92 at Man United. It's for me, it's it's at that level of what they were able to do together and achieve. All of those players, apart from Ulrich, left the club and got a transfer to a top five league, but they've all come back again. So then they're back again playing probably even better players than they were before.
Yeah.
Like this year's Champions League was just unbelievable. Like, me and my wife, my two kids, like we watch it as it's like our team. It's like,
Yeah.
somewhere you've lived for so long and become a part of. Like, it was just amazing to watch.
There was two things you say. So being a group was one, and coming together. Was there a second thing you said?
Yeah, it's the whole environment around the way they think about the game and the way they think about their training. I think I don't know if it came out, if I read it somewhere, but I did know it's like Chettle, the manager, hasn't used the word win in so many years, because they're so performance orientated. So they never go into a game talking about like winning the game. It's about purely the performance and how they're going to apply themselves to it, like tactically or whatever. And obviously, a big part of the work they've done there is Bjorn Monsverk, the guy that leads on their performance mindset program, and he works with the team and with certain individuals, and there's no doubt that these two things have gone hand in hand in terms of the success that they've had. But also, like they've got a great manager, like he knows what he wants. He sticks to what he wants. And you go around the rest of the club, and you've got people that are like Buddha through and through. The sporting director played for Glimt. The assistant manager played for Glimt and is the dad of Fredrik Bjørken. The guy who runs the club, Fruder, is from from the city. The guy that runs the grassroots part of the club, but is like a huge part of the club, Ørjan Berg, like one of the best Norwegian players that's ever played. He's still there from the city. Patrick Berg, the captain's his son. Like,
It's a
there's
real
a
family.
yeah, like there's a guy
Yeah.
Stig Johansson, the head of coach development, like played for Southampton in the Premier League. He's like from the area, played for Glimt. There's just all these different people that are like Buddha through and through. I could carry on talking about like how many there are.
It's impressive.
You know what?
And like,
I had Dan. I had your former colleague Greg Broughton on another program I did. He did a webinar for us around it was the group of coaches we had were coaches working in the pro game, and he spoke about first of all the club and the region in the same way you do. So like it just feels like there's some magic dust going on up there. And considering it's in the Arctic Circle and geographically not especially appealing and really quite a local club, it's quite astounding to see what you've done. We've talked about winning twice now in different kind of contexts. We spoke about it in terms of kids football and the academy stuff. Talk us through, and for someone who's never heard of an outcome versus goal versus a process goal, for example, talk us through that idea of the coach not talking about winning and not trying to find ways to win, but simply focusing on the performance part. Just walk us through that and give us, bring it to life, I guess, with how you found that at Bodø.
yeah, I think you can't take the thought away of winning. Like that's never going to happen. And players all have goals that are, either like North Star, like dreams, or outcomes. Like players want to win trophies. They might want a transfer to another club. They might want to be an international. They might want to play for our first team. All these things are there, and it's like you should never take that away from people. But just having that isn't enough. Like that just has to be your kind of like your motivation. What's really important then is like there are these other outcomes that need to happen for you to get there. So if I'm going to want to be a professional footballer at Notts County, that might be my North Star. Like, what are the milestones that I probably need to achieve to get there? Like, and again, you're not talking about, oh, I need to win this game in the under 18s or whatever, but there are certain things that have to happen. Like, you have to probably sign a contract. If you're 17, you might have to play for the under 21s. You might have to have a good loan. Like, all these things that potentially have to fall in place for you to get there. But again, you're not just going to make those happen either. They're all things that are kind of out of your control.
Mhm.
So I think when you talk about then like the process and the performance, that's really like it's what you can own, it's what you can control, and what you can really like affect on a daily basis. And I think to empower players or coaches to understand that performance is within my control to a certain extent. Like, I can't control what you're going to do if I'm against you, or what you're going to do if you're my teammate, but I can influence that, but I can really control what I do and how I perform. And that's where I think performance goals and then the process goals are really, really, really key, and making sure that they're, you know, correct and right for the individual is massive. Like I say, the process, that's your day to day. Like, what do I need to do today to make sure I affect my performance in a positive way?
So if they're not talking, because it sounds like a very youth development kind of environment, even in the first team there, where you said it yourself, the Knutson doesn't use the word win, and they don't talk about winning. They just do their whatever their tactical preparation or their DNA. I guess they have a very clear sort of playing style. How do we how do we then convince youth development coaches to follow suit with something like that? And I guess everyone wants to win and no one's hiding from it, but how do we? I think it's pretty much the same question. But I'm just thinking, if Bodø Glimt are doing that in the Champions League, surely we can do that in,
Yeah.
the not Elizabethan League, whatever it's called. I can't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
that it feels like it's so accessible, but it also feels like there's barriers to coaches wanting to.
I guess one comes down to maybe knowledge a
Mm,
little bit and backing yourself to be able to do it, and
Yeah.
it being deemed good enough compared to the pressure that you're under. Because, like, let's face it, a lot of grassroots coaches are under pressure, like from the rest of the parent group potentially, because maybe they don't understand it as much, or they just want their boy to go enjoy football because he enjoys winning. Um, so I think it's getting that balance right, and I guess, I mean, I think there's loads of good work as well that I see, and it's changed certainly a lot since when I played football in grassroots, where there was only one outcome that mattered. Like, the change in this country, I think, has been brilliant, and there's a lot of good coach education that goes on out there, and that's probably why we're seeing the fruits with the young players that we spoke about earlier. Um, but I think it's when it's not your job as well, and you've been at work all day, and then you've got to go and plan a training session, or you've got a game on the weekend, and you've got all this other stuff going on in your life. Like, really backing yourself to have the knowledge to showcase like how to manage that situation properly, I think is really tough.
yeah.
And you don't really have anyone there necessarily like to support you, like a head of coach development or an academy manager or a phase lead. You've got probably like one of your best mates and him him with his son in the team or her. And it's yeah, I can see really easily how this sort of thing could like spiral out of control for somebody. Um, and yeah, what they just probably just need more support and more guidance, more knowledge.
Yeah. Dan, so that takes us nicely then maybe into what was the kind of the main point of the conversation, I guess, in many ways. And you mentioned it already with what you were doing there, and it's all about kind of that performance mindset, which sounds like it was a significant part, or at least a piece of the puzzle, I guess, that led to the successes. Can you talk us a bit about like performance mindset? I guess firstly, what that means to you, and then we can maybe look about how that was delivered in practice and the impact that it had. But I guess firstly, what is performance mindset? What would be your definition of it, and maybe also what isn't it? Because we might be confused about like
Yeah.
just you shouting at both players and just demanding stuff, rather than actually having a mindset.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's a minefield. Number one, like there's so many different things out there, and I've managed to work with some different people and learn from so many different people that I kind of probably pick the things that work for me at the time, or work with the type of players that you're working with. And it's, I guess, like we spoke about a foundation phase players toolkit earlier. I think if you're working with players, you need to have this toolkit that you can go to. There's no one size fits all for this sort of thing. I think that's really important to understand. Although there's going to be certain things that are going to benefit everybody just to think about. Um, but for me, it's like getting the best out of the individual, um, making sure that they can see pressure in a different way, um, understand mistakes, understand like the link between when something happens on the pitch, either positive or negative, how that can affect the way they're going to think for the next 30 seconds, 30 minutes. Some players maybe 30 days, probably maybe still thinking about something that happened, and um, it's always thinking about what's next, like rather than dwelling on the past in the moment, like thinking about the next action and what can I actually control now and focus on moving forwards. And ultimately, it's all about positively affecting your performance rather than negatively affecting your performance, because obviously everything you do is controlled by one thing, and that's what's going on in your head.
Yeah, your brain. So how would you, in practice then? Because obviously that sounds great, and we want to do these things, and I'm sure no one would disagree that these are important things to have. So you say these things about seeing push differently, making mistakes, and my head goes straight to players that I know. I love that part of our team that there's some kids that can make 1,000 mistakes, doesn't bother them at all. One can make one mistake 3 months ago, and he's still talking about it 3 months later because it's in his head. What practical things or steps do you do then as a coach, or an environment you create there to try and deal with some of these things? How do you approach it in a practical basis?
Um, like I said before, I think there's different approaches with different players, but there's obviously stuff that can work across the board. I think we've spoken a bit about goal setting already, and the the basic point of goal setting is for me is about motivation. It's like, why are you here? Like as a player, why are you turning up every day? Why is it you get out of bed, get your kit together, and go to football? Um, why do you commit so much time to doing this? Why do you sacrifice so much for what you're doing? And I think that's always a great place to start with players, like because maybe they actually don't have a motivation. Maybe they're doing it because they've been told that's what you do as a 9-year-old boy or girl. Like your mates are playing football, so you go and do it.
Yeah.
That was certainly the case with my daughter when we were in Norway because she'd never kicked a ball before in her life, but every girl in her class played for a team, so she went, hated it, and ended up like moving on. But
Yeah.
I think if you don't have the motivation and like understand what your motivation is, I think it's really hard to like to get to the top level. I think you'll see that if you spoke to a lot of like top professionals, their motivation's really high, and it probably doesn't really matter what that motivation is. It might be money, like,
Yeah.
and who's to say that's a bad motivation for them to have if that's what gets them to where they want to be and to their highest level. But I know a lot of young players these days talk about supporting their family, and especially those who've maybe had it a bit tougher when they're younger. Their motivations are normally like really high. Um, some of them are motivated just by playing the game and enjoying it. And I think that's always a good starting point because it gives you something to reference back to when things are tough. And they think a lot of them will probably in like a give up mindset. You can actually talk to them about like the reasons why they're doing what they're doing and linking it back to their motivation and their goals. And
So
like we
it's
said,
important that a coach understands the players why, I guess, isn't it? Why are you here? And it's okay the player knowing that, which is
yeah,
important. But also, if the coach understands it, then you kind of got, I guess, you got a tap in there, haven't you? You've got a link there that you can work with and support.
yeah, 100%. It's probably the first thing I would always work through if I was going to work with a new group of players. That'd be my first like starting point with anyone in the group.
Yeah.
Um, Understanding their why. And some great resources out there as well. Like if you, because it's sort of the players need to understand why you're talking about the why as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's no point just saying like, oh, what's your motivation? And they tell you and then you move on. Like they need to understand why you're having this conversation, and like what the benefit is of talking about it. And um, maybe that sometimes can be the hard part is some of these kids opening up and telling you the truth about what it is they really want.
And that's the second time, and I'm going to surprise you here because I remember we talked about light bulbs before we started, but I have a light bulb moment of a few years ago, going back quite a while, and having a conversation with you. And you spoke about we'll call it extrinsic motivation, so motivation that comes from external stuff. Um, and I remember you being one of the first people I heard say, and that's okay too, because most people think if you're motivated by whatever, money, cars, big contracts, I don't know, whatever kind of lifestyle, that's a bad thing. And we all kind of strive, certainly with kids anyway, I guess you strive for things to be intrinsic for them, where the motivation to play and to love playing comes from within. Talk us through a little bit of both, I guess, in terms of why are you okay with that extrinsic motivation?
Um, I think we're very, very lucky to be working or playing in a sport like football, where most people are going to have the love for the game. Yeah,
Mm.
there are some players out there that talk about it even at the highest level that they actually don't enjoy football, but 99.9% of them do. And I think we're very, very fortunate. Um, if I wasn't doing this, like who knows what I'd be doing for a job. Maybe my motivation for doing that job will be very different. And I think that's going to be the case for most people around the world. Their motivations for doing the job they do and getting out of bed every day is more about providing for their family and like actually sustaining a reasonable life. So I think it's really important to like set that to one side. That actually it's okay for those things to be a motivator in terms of like, right, I want to earn good money. You know, I want to make sure that I'm I'm looked after for the rest of my career or set up for my career finishes. If that's what's going to motivate you to play at the highest level to do your job, because that's what you got to remind yourself for a lot of these like professionals, like it's their job. They're getting
When
paid to
you
do it, and to paid to perform.
when you hear of Johnny's mum and dad giving him a fiver every time he scores for your under 11s on a Sunday, do you get involved in that? Do you? I'm pretty sure you'll say no. But what are your thoughts on that then?
Um, yeah, like I don't get involved. It's not really any of my business. Um, if you have a conversation with that player, maybe he talks about it, and maybe you can support him to for maybe that not to be so much of his motivation. I think the difference when you talk about the two and like it's okay, I'm saying it's okay to have these. I don't think they're as powerful as if you've got things about really wanting to develop yourself and like when you talk about the intrinsic stuff, I think actually that's more powerful and can be a bigger motivator than
Mm.
external stuff. So I think if you can support those people that have maybe a big influence from outside to actually like really concentrate on what's within, I think that could be more powerful.
Yeah, because whether it's scoring goals or just sorry, Scott,
Uh,
so whether it's scoring goals or whether it's just performing or whether it's just running up and down, I don't know, whatever it happens to be, it's all right. I think it's all right extrinsically rewarding kids with stuff. I think the problem is when you take that away. What replaces that? Because you spoke about the doing a normal job analogy. Most people, if you took the paycheck away, wouldn't do it anymore. You know what I mean? So that's always my concern with externally rewarding kids with stuff. That do we try to do the right thing, but then change their motivation for just playing and succeeding and running about and scoring a goal and
Yeah.
whatever it might be? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, it's it's their decision as a family. And I've seen it with with other teams that I've been around where often it can be the grandparent, and a lot of time it's just they want to give the kids some extra pocket money, and that's just how it comes across in the way they do it. And I don't think they see it as this is what's going to motivate my kid to be a better footballer and maybe get to an academy or to become a pro. Like, I think it's a bit more innocent than that, or I'd like to think it is. Maybe I'm being naive, but um, yeah, like I say, it's if that's taken away, yeah, again, that's probably going to be down to the individual. How deep is their motivation with other stuff, and how much have they actually thought about it, talked about it, which ultimately is what's most important.
Related to that, Dan, can I ask then, following from Ray's question, just about whether or not this is something you think is like the nurture nature debate when it comes to mindset? Are all players able to develop a kind of good performance mindset regardless of their starting point, or does some, it's not possible, or some you have to work harder with? I can imagine there's some coach that are thinking, oh, I've got some players that have got great mindsets, because they're just wired that way. But little Jimmy or little Susie's got no chance of being that way because they don't, they haven't got that thing. Is there different compared to say physical stuff? We actually sees how far someone can run and they can jump and stuff. Is it, how coachable is it? And can anyone develop their mindset?
Yeah, I think anyone can develop it. I think you have to look at it as another part of your body that you can train. I think that's that's something that I always speak to players about is, you want to go and get stronger, you go in the gym and you work hard at it. If you want to become better at a technique, you go out and you practice it. And that's exactly the same way with developing anything in terms of your mindset. It's make sure you're practicing the things that are going to help you to think and react and behave on the pitch in terms of when you're performing. And it's a lot harder because your brain does what it wants. Like,
Yeah.
it's sometimes a hard concept to get kids to realize, but you're not in control of what happens first. Like, if I was going to walk outside and a crocodile walked up my driveway, like my brain's going to do something before I have a chance
Yeah.
to even realize what's going on, because that's what you're wired to do. Like, that's how humans have been evolved into like surviving. So I think that's really important that players understand that. Like, something's going to happen up there before you can get hold of it. But it's about what you do next that's really important. And have you got the techniques and have you practiced it enough time to be able to kind of suppress that thought process? And I really try and talk to players about how it makes them feel, and that's again can be difficult. Talking to a 10-year-old's dead easy because they're so open. But when you get the under 15s together and you talk about it in a room together and they start talking about feelings and like it's a lot
Two words,
harder,
a
but
couple of grunts
like
at each other. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like we're fortunate you have some players where they're okay, they go for it and that supports the rest of the group and eventually you get some quite good sharing. But you know, when something happens and it makes you feel sad, like what happened? What happens to you? What do you feel? And they start to think like, oh yeah, I get like a lump in my throat, and if I'm nervous, what happens? What do you feel? Oh, you feel your stomach and changing my heart rate, my body temperature changes, like all these things that you can like talk about and start to understand. I think are really important for young people, um, because you start to rationalize everything and understand that like it's not my fault. So if I give the ball away and they score, like it's a mistake, and I'm gonna feel a certain way for a second or a bit longer, but that's okay. Like it, hopefully, then it normalizes like being sad or being angry or being nervous or any of these other like feelings and emotions. And that's something that I'm really, really like. I want players to understand, and I think that helps them in life. Like
Yeah.
people will say, especially with men and like men's mental health, like men have been suppressing their feelings for God knows how many years. Like, let's normalize talking about it. Um, and it's like for me, it's the number one then in terms of like supporting you to crack on and perform better.
And if we started this conversation, kind of come full circle to talk about the World Cup. And as we know, certainly, I don't know if it's like this in every country, but certainly in England, you know, the the villain of the English World Cup tends to get a pretty hard time in the media and in the supporters group and stuff like that. So if it's the manager, if it's the team, because I don't know of a poor result against. I listened to Joe Hart this morning talking about high performance, talking about the defeat against Iceland, for example, a few years back, or the David Beckham red card, or the Gareth Southgate penalty, and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that because of that kind of culture of blame or the fear culture around it, that it drips down into young players, or certainly how coaches and parents see football and interact with football with young players as well?
Yeah, I think it definitely does, but I think it happens in all walks of life as well. It probably happens in schools on a daily basis and um, in families, and because like mistakes happen, bad things happen, you react to it in a certain way, and you never, like I say, you're never always 100% in control of what that reaction is going to be like. So I think it's obviously heightened in World Cups and in football because there's so many people watching it, and like there's no way of hiding away from that as a player on the pitch. Like how many people are actually influenced in that moment. But I'd say to anybody who then first thing they do when Rashford misses a penalty to get on social media and like start attacking him with a racist abuse, like if they'd been working on their mindset, they might have had a little bit of a better way of dealing with that. Because again, that's just another way of someone's emotions taking the better of them and doing something stupid. So um, yeah, I think there's certainly been a huge change in the way that the England football team worked on this sort of thing under Southgate. And you see in the documentaries and the things when he talks about it, that's again obviously a huge success. Although I think our players are, on the whole, are getting better. It's obviously been a huge part of the success of football in this country at youth and international, full international level.
Yeah. Dan, can I ask you a question? I don't know if this is an unfair one or not, because maybe you do have these or maybe you don't. But would you say there was like a set of characteristics or attributes or behaviors that would kind of under underlying a performance mindset? So I'm thinking like being confident or having a desire to improve, whatever it may be. But are there things there that either you have, or are they just is there too many and it would depend on the player that you kind of don't have like a list as such? It's just certain things, or is there like a definite list? We say if you've got at least six things, that's a good foundation in which you might have a good performance
Yeah, yeah.
mindset.
Um, I think there's a study done by a professor about resilience theory, which I think is really like really interesting. And they talk about motivation is one of the parts in there. One's about focus, one's about social support around you. One of the interesting ones for me, and like this is what I learned from Bjorn Mansverk at Bodø Glimt, is the word confidence. And it's something I've taken on board, like in everything that I do when I talk to players now, is it's actually okay to not be confident, because for me, when you talk about confidence, it's about the outcome. It's, are you confident that you're going to win the game? Are you confident that you're going to perform well? It's like, well, there's a lot of stuff that's out of my control. So how can I be like 100% confident about it? And the analogy that he used was he was an ex-fighter pilot, and he was then training fighter pilots, and they went off um, this theory that how can you be confident to go up in the air in a fighter jet, fly over another country that you're at war with, have people shooting at you from the ground, have other planes shooting at you whilst you're trying to shoot at them. How can you be confident that you're going to come out of that like alive? But he said what they did have is their self-belief in their ability to perform the mission was like through the roof. And that's something that's really stuck with me with players and football. Like, not that it's the same, like, but you're going out onto a pitch with 21 other players, three officials, coaching staff, managers, other players, tens of thousands of people. Like, they're all having an effect on what happens in this game. So how can I be confident about the result? So again, that's something we've been trying to push with players, is that it's actually okay to not be confident, but do you believe in yourself?
Love
Do
that.
you believe in your ability, and like, who are you when you're at your best? And how's your best version of you going to like attack this game or this training session? Um, and then again, you get them to start thinking less about the outcome and the confidence in the outcome, and more about like self-belief, my performance, what can I control?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that's really like a key part, I think, of not just being ready to perform, but during performance, being able to handle mistakes.
That self belief is more, I guess, it's more embedded, it's more long term, it's more robust, whereas confidence can kind of waver, I guess, even within a game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like
Yeah,
I
a bit
said to the
more
lads in the
backbone.
15s, like, how confident are you if I put you out in the to go and play against the under 10s? Oh yeah, really confident. Okay, right, now you got to go and defend 1v1 against Jody Jones from our first team. Like, how confident are you now? Not very confident. Like,
Yeah.
so surely that means it's okay to have that wavering level of confidence, but you don't
Yeah.
believe any different about your own ability in either of them. And I think that's really like powerful to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Love that. My last question then, Ray, if that's okay, and then so Dan, and then if you want to jump in the few before we finish off, is just how much time um, is given to this, like, or was given to this? Is it something that's actually like almost ring fenced off, where you might do like, a classroom session on it with the players, or is it just embedded within the practical sessions, or is it a bit of both? How do you get it into the players and make this part of kind of their diet, I guess, in their development?
Yeah, I think the best case scenario is that you have someone who it's their dedicated job to support not just the players but the coaches, to embed it in like everyday work. The reality for a lot of people is that's not going to be the case, and that's a reality for us at a Cat 3 with limited budgets, and it's me that delivers these workshops to the players in our academy, and then I get support from our player care officer Greg, who's played at the level, played for the club, been an academy player, and he's a real um, another person that really buys into this sort of thing. And then we're now trying to work on like, how do we make this more deliverable for the coaching staff. So I've developed like resources then that can be used. A lot of the stuff we do is done in group workshops, and then the boys get homework and they take something home where they have to answer some questions, and then it takes a little bit of time just to collate what's in there and kind of build these like profiles for them. But once you've done the hard work with an individual, it's then just about maintaining it and tweaking it and like helping them to understand it more and more. Again, like, the older they are, the more responsibility they can take over what that looks like day to day as well. So yeah, there's lots of different ways, but you mean ideally your best way is like one to one. That's like the most powerful, like when it comes to this sort of thing, because you can really get to the depths of how they think, and what's really going to help them, and that's probably the preferred way for me to work as well. But like I said, resources don't always lean towards that.
Of course, yeah.
That's something you do, Dan, isn't it? Away from the academy environment, you do that one-to-one support with players, that performance mindset support.
Yeah. I've been for a couple of years been supporting one or two players, playing at various levels, and yeah, it's probably like it's one of the things I enjoy most. This is probably what I enjoy most about working in football.
Mm.
I think it's the most powerful part of um, helping a player to achieve like whatever they can achieve. Because it's like I said before, it's the one thing that controls everything that you do. So if you can get that in the best shape possible to perform, then hopefully it gets everybody to maximize their potential.
If I was a player that needed your help, or if I was a coach of a player who needed your help, how do we get in touch with you, mate?
Um, yeah, so I've got social media page on TikTok, on Instagram, website as well, which I can give you guys the details for. And obviously, time is always limited, so but I'm always like willing to help people. That's probably the big thing for me. It's again, when we talk about motivation, like my motivation has always been about helping other people. That's, obviously I got into coaching when I was younger because I just loved football. I wanted to be around it as much as possible. But it's, ultimately like the jobs I've always had, whether it's been in education or working with kids who've been kicked out of schools or whatever, it's always been about like supporting people to do better and helping people achieve. So yeah, that's the driving force for me.
Great. Well done. Well done.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ray. Well, what we'll do, Dan, if it's okay, we'll put your social media links in our show notes so people can find us nice and easy. They want to reach out to you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for the conversation. Like the podcast is just about us thinking about ideas and stuff like that. And we spend a lot of time talking about sessions and practices and drills and, it's that kind of stuff, which I know we all love doing. And I'm not saying it's forgotten about, but sometimes that kind of the psychological side to it all and that mindset and those things there aren't always given the attention or the value that maybe, it is, and it's such an important key and it's to unlock everything else. So having you on today, Dan, to talk about it, mate, has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Would you come back on again at some point?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thanks for the time today. I've really enjoyed talking about it. Like I say, talking about football is great, but also talking about something like this that I'm really passionate about, it's been, really interesting. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. All good, Ray?
Yeah, no, thanks, Dan, for coming in and Scott for facilitating. It's really, really good chat, a really interesting one. It's slightly different, like you say, from the sessions and all that. Although the finishing carousel, I think, is going to be rolled out across the country.
Yeah, exactly. As I was about to say, that'll be the bit of sticks to everybody. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, guys, enjoy the World Cup, and I look forward to speaking to you both again soon.
Likewise, Scott. Thank you.
Nice. Cheers, guys.
This episode was brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly. Established since 2006, Soccer Coach Weekly is a leading source of inspiration and advice for all grassroots coaches. Join thousands of youth soccer coaches just like you, saving time and effort in their goal of having the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode.